Up next, we had Cesaro versus Dolph Ziggler. And, man, how far has the Intercontinental Championship fallen when we're having random champion versus number one contender non-title matches going on Raw without any kind of advertisement and with no build-up whatsoever?
Yeah, it's frustrating because I feel like Dolph has been a benefit to the Intercontinental Championship on one hand because he's having like these TV clinics. I mean, again, just last week had a 20-minute affair with Orton. It was just phenomenal, and I feel like the Intercontinental Championship really needs a champion like Dolph Ziggler. But then on the other hand, you get moments like this, what you just said, a match between two guys like Ziggler and Cesaro, two top-tier mid-card acts, and it doesn't even get advertised, not even like a blurb about it anywhere. And it was a solid match, a solid affair. Great moments. One particular highlight that stood out for me, Cesaro did this just beautiful-looking gutbuster that really exhibited his power. And Dolph's comebacks are always fun to watch. But then even the finish I felt like was kind of abrupt because Cesaro hits an uppercut, which granted Dolph does sell like death, but he actually gets the 3 count off of it, which really surprised me.
Right. I love that they're kind of making his uppercut seem more devastating than they did before. But I have a question for you, John.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you see where I'm coming from when I say that there is a difference between important and prestigious?
Could you elaborate on it a little more? Because I don't want to lie and say that I do get it. So where do you make the distinction?
Okay, to me, as far as the WWE goes, the most important championships are the ones that get featured as championships, the ones where people want to win that title, the ones that are involved in more interesting storylines, whereas the more prestigious championships are just the ones that are on the guy who's highest up on the card.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's like hypothetically, if like the world title is prominently and regularly featured in storylines like that's an important championship. But if a guy like Randy Orton was holding the U.S. title, that would be the most prestigious title. Am I following you? Okay.
Yes. And the reason that I wanted to establish the difference there is because I feel like the WWE has gone out of their way to establish a difference between those two adjectives. Because to me, the U.S. title is the most important secondary title, while the Intercontinental title is the most prestigious secondary title. And the reason I say that is because the U.S. title has been a part of more important storylines. It's gotten more focus as far as actual television goes, where they actually say, this is a championship, this guy is the champion, you should try to win this title. But the Intercontinental Championship has been on the guy who's been in more important matches, who's been in bigger matches, who's won more important matches, who has done more for himself while holding the title.
Right, I see why you make that distinction now. Okay.
Because for the longest time, and I would even go as far as to say even still, I said that the WWE wants the U.S. Championship to be the number 2 title in the company. And it's kind of weird because it kind of goes against the WWE wants everything WWE, and they don't want any outside forces to seem more important than WWE logic, because the U.S. title was a WCW creation.
Right.
So it just seems weird that they would want to make that a bigger deal than the Intercontinental title. But then you see a night like tonight where the U.S. champion was in a match that got heavily involved with a storyline where the challenger for the U.S. title is one of the most interesting things going on right now in the WWE. And the Intercontinental Champion was in a throwaway match that nobody cared about other than the fact that it was a good wrestling match.
Right, yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. So, it's an interesting place for Dolph to be, and Sheamus for that matter, since we're grouping.
And since we're talking about interesting things regarding Dolph Ziggler, on the app, he admitted that Cesaro is probably better than him at wrestling.
Wow.
How huge of a rub is that for Cesaro when the show-off, the most braggart babyface that you can possibly imagine, the guy who says that wrestling is only like the 5th best thing he does, is giving credit to Cesaro for something that he takes so much pride in?
Yeah. Absolutely. And with a guy with a legit background, too. That's the thing about Ziggler. Like, yeah, in a kayfabe sense, like, he's very braggadocious, this, that, and the other.
Didn't he wrestle at Michigan State? Was that where it was?
It was Kent State.
Kent State. Is that in Michigan? I think it is.
It may be, so. But I think he was undefeated there, from what I understand. Like, never lost a match. And, you know, like, wrestling.
Oh, it's not in Michigan. It's in Ohio.
Well, see, brings it back. That whole brief battle for Cleveland feud between Dolph Ziggler and The Miz. But, yeah, you know, like, wrestling is in his blood. So to make that concession, I think is huge for Cesaro. What else is huge for Cesaro, I guess, is his momentum going into, I guess, his inevitable Intercontinental Championship match. Because after the match, he drills Ziggler with the neutralizer. You know, Dolph being a champion is always a very precarious scenario for us predictors out there, because on one hand, I'd like to say, oh yeah, he's going to retain, he's going to have X amount of time with the championship, but because Ziggler is such a lovable loser, and he makes losing pretty much seem like winning with how much heart and everything he exhibits, I feel like he could drop that title at any time. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with it.
Yeah, exactly. It's really tough to call, and especially when he's going against somebody like Cesaro, where you don't really need that active of an imagination to imagine somebody like Cesaro defeating in a wrestling match somebody like Ziggler. Plus, you add in the fact that the WWE loves to torture Dolph Ziggler fans. And on top of that, the WWE also loves to torture Cesaro fans. So it's like, you can't really call it where you say, oh, this guy is better, so he's going to win. You can't really call it where you say, oh, this guy is more over, so he's going to win. And you can't really say it where you say, oh, well, the WWE is getting more behind this guy, so he's going to win. So it is genuinely a toss-up here.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Ashton, but that makes me look all the more forward to it. I think these guys can have a phenomenal Intercontinental Championship bout at Hell in a Cell. I hope these guys get 15 minutes. I think they could set the place on fire, so we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. Of course they're going to. That's what they do. They were given this match tonight because WWE knows that they're going to put on a good match no matter what. They got the time and they cashed it in. So up next we had another backstage authority segment. Rollins, Orton, and Kane backstage arguing until Triple H walks in and tells them that Kane is going to be the general of their match tonight because Orton and Rollins just can't seem to get along. And they start bickering and going back and forth, and then Kane screams, "Shut up!" And that it's time to handle business, and that it's time for them to give Cena and Ambrose a taste of hell. And then they walk off, and then we get our main event.